All right, welcome everybody. As part of the series of the EPMO whiteboard sessions, we have now started off with the next item that we are going to bring along. So if y'all guys remember, we originally started talking about the EPMO, and when we started talking about the EPMO in the first sessions, we said, here's how that looks like. Subsequently to that, then we focused on the P of the EPMO. The P really stands because everybody thinks that we only do projects, but that's not true, right? We do portfolios, we do products, we do all kinds of things. Well, today, in the 30 minutes that we're going to do, we're going to give you a bird's eye about the E that stands for enterprise. And how do you quantify an enterprise, right? And again, I have a panel of people with me that they all have great knowledge about that. And so they will interact with me as we go with this. And in the future, we hope to have this not be just a podcast, but maybe even a standing interactive item. So just so you guys know, so you will hear more voices coming in as we go. And as we were saying, enterprise, right? An enterprise can consist of anything that is either consists of more than one or two people to the entire universe for all I care, right? And an enterprise really is that you have a mission statement, an objective, a measurable element that provides outcomes to yourself or to others. That's really what an enterprise is. So how do you establish that? This item that we're going to present today is high level. It can drill down to a lot of details, which we will do in subsequent sessions if needed and if warranted. It is not portraying any stance or any decision. It's us providing you with the knowledge so that you can consume it and use it to your advantage. So let's start. So when we talk about a target operating model, truly, you're building the blueprint of your house. You're not building it. You could, but we're not. We're just planning it. We're saying instead, what is it that I want? And the first thing you want to do is you truly want to say, hey, what's my vision, right? And again, your vision could be anything. If you ask Jeff Bezos what his vision is he wants to be the #1 retailer of the world, right? If you ask my son, who is 15, what's your vision? And he says, I just want to conquer the latest version of World of Warcraft, right? And that's his enterprise and valuable, right? So again, when you're starting to set up your target operator, you want to have a vision. And here's the cool part about this. You can have a vision for, let's say, Southwest Heat that someone can give us, right? But we as individuals can have that too. And as we're interacting with others, we are also sharing that and then coming to our common sense. In today's session here, we have a bunch of EPMO and HR people in the room. And so we are having an EPMO vision at this point. Sorry, Michelle, we're just taking over a little bit.
You're good. I'm following.
So once you have that, the first thing you got to do is you got to establish a strategy, baby. I hate to break it to all of you. Strategy happens top down, does not happen bottom up. That doesn't mean we don't care, but you will have to sell it to the person on the top who then sells it to his peers and then it comes back down.
Right.
Strategy does not work bottom up.
Right.
So how do we do that? Well, you establish your strategic layer. Well, the first thing you want to do is you want to establish goals, right? And here's the cool part about it. Goals could be anything. A goal could be, I want to be happy. The other goal could say, oh, I want to work efficiently across a budget and elements I want to do. The important thing about goals and about everything, basically what you do, is you're going to make it smart. It needs to be measurable. You need to make people accountable. It has to be repeatable, and it has to be able to transcend. So as a result of that, right, and in this example here, you can see that I took examples across the board. I said, hey, I want to be able to do an audit. Okay, that could be a goal. But I also want to be able to say, I want to work efficiently. Now, here is the catch-22 to goals. And you guys can probably relate to this, is goals can be established, but it's really hard to make them measurable. You don't want to, because then you're going to be held accountable to them. So for example, I could say I did good. Oh, the first thing that's going to come out of everybody's mouth is like, why did you do good? Well, I did good because I washed my wife's dishes. And then my wife might probably agree, but I did that at 10 p.m. in the morning on a Tuesday. And if you ask my boss, I did absolutely not do good because I was supposed to be in a meeting, right? So there is a measurable goal. My goal was to make to be efficient, but I didn't measure it properly. So that's what I want to try to specialize when we talk about these goals, right? Now, and when we talk about the goals, we want to measure them. I already started talking about this, right? And so we call those key performance indicators. Mm-hmm. Now, people get really nervous when you talk about performance and indicators because, oh, you're measuring me. And people have the tendency of thinking about that negatively. Right? It's not. A key performance indicator, even if it's a negative one, has value. Hey, you know what? I am not a morning person because my biometrics tell me that I do not operate and work well in the morning. That could be a key performance indicator that tells me that's negative. No, it's actually a positive. What do I do, right? Yeah, I'll go with that in a moment. Is I make sure that my biggest and most challenging things happen in the afternoon because I know that's what I'm on, right? Yeah, Michelle.
So my question is, then what would be the difference between a venture versus an enterprise?
Excellent question. So a venture is that you join together with a common goal, okay, right?
Yes.
Whereas an enterprise is you establish a goal and then join the people together.
Understood. Okay.
So it's like ventures, hey, we all want to go play racquetball.
Right.
Let's go on a venture together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas she says, I want to make sure that our children are going to be out of the shelters 50% faster. I'm going to create an enterprise that's going to do that.
Okay.
And now, so you have a vision that draws people in, or you have a venture where you have people that have common. All right. They're not mutually exclusive, by the way.
Understood. Yeah. Okay.
All right. So once you've established what your KPIs are, you have to have design principles. Again, just like I was very, very stringent about saying the strategic layer is top down. Mm-hmm. When we say design principles, unless you have a fully automated canning factory that needs nothing, and you still need a person to push the button, I would say, it always starts with people. Always. There is, if anybody tells you that they're doing something and they're not taking into consideration people, run. Run, Forrest, run. Why? Because you are being set up to fail. As simple as that. So, well, as wonderful as we as people, as individuals are, we're a pain in the butt too. We're not constant. We are not on off. We have variations. So it's very important that you establish your design principles, establishing what the value is, right? I'm going to go back to that do good. I did good thing. My wife probably thinks that I did really good, but my boss does not. So where's my middle ground? Oh, maybe I should kind of like work harder, get my bonus and get her a dishwasher. Now I'm doing good on both sides, right? So again, the people aspect is that you have to really establish something that people can understand and adopt. And that is hard, okay? You also have to make sure, and again, I hate to break it to everybody, no matter how flat an organization is, there is always leaders and followers. So there's always a hierarchy. You can work and say, no, we're flat. I mean, I hear it for those people that are in the room that are from the millennial generation, I don't hold that against you, but it is utopic. There is always leaders, there's always followers, and the leaders make decisions that the followers may not like, but they still have to follow, right? Therefore, but here's the thing, you want to have with that interaction of people, a balance between what is authoritative and what is truly collaborative, and you want to establish that. So once you, and again, this is the hard part, by the way, okay? But once you've established that in your operating model, people know what they're being held accountable for, what is expected of them, right? For better or for worse. So once you establish that, you then start establishing a process. And what you want to do with the process is truly say, okay, now we know what we're going to do. Now I'm going to tell you how we're going to do it. Not because I tell you to, but because it's better in a consensus. And I take the example of the janitor, right? So work means that you get paid for it, because not always is it something that you like. If you are in the category that you do work that you like, you're lucky. Most people work because they have to, because they need to, what have you. But think of it this way. I've never, ever met a janitor who's happy to go clean the toilets. But they are proud of doing it, and they want to do it right. And they do it across a process, right? So they say, I take them up and I will mop in a circular motion, because if I do it in a back and forth one, I get streaks. We don't know that. He knows that. He takes pride in that. So what happens is that you establish a process. Mind you, that your process is obviously to align it so that everybody agrees with the process, right? So your target operating model means, it doesn't mean a one size fits all, but it's kind of like a little bit like Henry Ford was, to say you can have any kind of color as long as it's black, because that's the only color I'm producing. And you know what? For a while it works. Same thing happens when you simplify a process. When you have processes, the first thing you have to ask is, does it align to the vision? Does it align to the goals? Does it align to the KPIs, for starters, right? Mm-hmm. You might not like it, but you'll have to do it. Mm-hmm. The second thing you have to say, is that process efficient? Does it simplify what I do? If I have to enter the data 10 times for 1 hour, that means that a process that should take 1 hour is now taking 10 hours. So you want to simplify that, right? Mm-hmm. And but here's the thing, simplification is not the golden bullet, because sometimes processes have to be complex. Think of the triage that nurses and doctors do in the battlefield. Mm-hmm. They know exactly how to save somebody's life. But there are 50 people and you can only address 30 of them. They'll have to do a process that is completely opposite to what they are doing. But they have to make the simplification so that they can improve their operational capabilities, right? When I talk to doctors that tell me about that, you have a newfound respect for them because of their people skills, but also of their flexibility of the process. Which leads me to the last thing, right? Your process should support what you're doing as a mission. Your process also is not etched in stone, okay? If you get people that come to you, give you a process, and then tell you this is the Bible moving forward, think of consultancy companies. They're really good at that. They bring you these process managers, they pay a ton of money to them, and then they leave you with a book and say, work that. Well, typically speaking, once you are doing the first part of the process, when you finish that part, the beginning of that process probably already has changed. And it's a good thing. So it's a never-ending activity, right? So we talked about the vision, we talked about the goals, we talked about the indicators that we are measuring our performance on. We are talking about people, how they do that. We talk about the process, which tells them. So obviously, and I do put it last, technology. We are in 2022, right? Even, as I said, to paraphrase again, Mr. Henry Ford, he was the first one that did do technology by doing the conveyor belt. Back in the day, you go back to the Middle Ages, they did have technology. They built moats and then filled water. That was their technology, right? technology is in the eyes of the beholder. There is no, but technology is never the leading cause for things. Yeah, halfway, thank you. So technology is in order to make your process efficient, but more importantly, because I told you, we people are great, but we're not consistent. Computers and technology are, because they only have two modes, 1 and 0, and then a lot of combinations, and they can do that endlessly without error, right? So when you are establishing your target operating model, you truly want to make sure that your technology aligns to that process and to the people first. The technology obviously provides value because it's part of the key performance indicators, and the technology pays for itself and allows for it to exist and to be transformed based off of the goals. Think of it this way. Let's do a shocker here. We get tomorrow the mandate to say we are no longer a shelter to do reunification of families, but we are shelter to do reunification of families, but back in the countries that they're going to. That's a fundamental change to what we would do, right? God forbid, but it could happen, right? Then our technology, which is all about case management, about traveling, has to be completely transcendentally be changed. And as a result, but it doesn't change because that the vision changed, the objective and goals change, the people's work and ethos and what they need to do change there for the process change, and at the last point, the technology changes. Makes sense, right? So this is your strategic layer. Your strategic layer happens from the top down. Your strategic layer, and this is a misconception, I would say. Strategy is not day to day. Strategy is a year or 5 years or 4 years, right? But think of it like an oil tanker. An oil tanker still has a strategy, as in they're going down the strait, right? It just takes them probably a day. They start braking in order to stop a day before, right? Strategy is the same thing. I might have a change in my strategy. That doesn't mean that from one day to the other we can change. Operations is not strategy. Let's just make that clear. You can make a jerk movement, but that's an operational emergency. Strategy needs to have a foundation. This is, for all purposes and intents, a very simple way to kind of like establish what your strategy and your target operating model is going to be. What I just showed you in the past 15 minutes, all of this, for some organizations, takes years to establish, and then continuous changes as we go, right? Okay, so now that you have established your strategy, you have to establish your business design layer. So I call that, so you're at level 1, now we're going to go to level 2, right? It is still part of the target operating model. So it is working top down, but there will be some interactions now bottom up. But so your business design layer, what does that really mean? Well, you want to establish what the channels are. Now, we are here at EPMO, so we were very selfish and started using technology channel. But it doesn't have to be. You can put there, my channel is a meeting room, a shelter, and a person that is standing at the entry of the border in El Paso. That's a channel. Channels are whatever you establish that they are, okay? So again, this target operating model, we're just doing it with something that is easy for us to understand, but they're not set in stone. And notice that we said, well, our channel is the desktop and the browser. But we purposely said we're not doing the phone. I can tell you now that when we wrote this, that was the case, but now we're using the phone. So it changed. No problem with that, right? So what that means now is that you establish your platforms. So remember, we're talking about the people, we're talking about the process. Now you started this at level 2. So you do have to set a framework of it. So in this case, we're talking about ServiceNow, Asana, and Microsoft Project, the almighty Microsoft Excel. Everybody loves Excel. If everything fails, go to your spreadsheet.
It's actually really sad.
But it is true, right? It is true. It's okay. It's okay, to be honest. I mean, I've seen people do things with Excel that drop. I mean, it's like awesome, right? Very laborious, but that's just an opinion. So anyways, you now have to establish a value chain. And when you establish a value chain, you need to put that, we call that like dating, right? Or others call it staging, and others call it ideation versus execution. These things, we just gave it a name. These names are not set in stone, okay? This is what we just said. So, hey, you have requirements. You then prioritize, you then design, then you go execute or build. And once you're done, you're going to close, right? We chose these words because they are common, right? But you can change. Remember, I said that target operating model is for the entire enterprise, or for a department, or for a business unit, or for four people in a room that want to go and align themselves. You can do this literally in 1 hour, 1 day, 5 or 10 years. Doesn't matter. So once you establish what your value chain is, you're going to establish now what's the value underneath each of those items. So when I said it's like level 2, it's now you're going to deep down and dive into this, right? So if we are talking about the requirements, right? So, well, how do requirements come to be? Well, somebody had an idea. The boss told me what to do. Those are two extremes, right? It's like the CEO says, drop everything. You're going to do 20 push-ups. Why? Because your job depends on it. Yes, sir. That's good, right? Or there could be somebody, the janitor, a guy that nobody really pays attention to, has this idea and says, like, by the way, I have this great idea. With this circle of motion, I actually can make the floors so clean that we can save money on detergents because my cleaning method does. And it so happens that because we have all these children and we have a problem with COVID and all that, that's becoming our highest cost thing. Sharon came up with an idea that's going to slash it by 50%. Well, that's awesome, right? Ideas can come from anywhere. So remember when we talked about the top-down part? Ideas, or the requirements part, comes from anywhere.
So that's the bottom up.
That's the anywhere, but okay. Yes, bottom. But yes, if you want to say it, it is bottom up, right? This is where you want. So, but it comes from everywhere. And one of the biggest, when you do your target operating model, is people want to have control. People want to have a say so. And I always say that people aspect is about humility. I really, really appreciate when somebody that might not do anything in my area or field comes up with an idea. It may be the worst idea ever, but the fact that he put the effort to come into the idea is a people value skill. So there are no wrong ideas. They might be put in the wrong place. They might not be relevant, but embrace that, right? Mm-hmm. So that's your bottom up. And so when you have your ideas and you create them, right? Well, now you go a little bit into, yeah, I'm going to give you free reign, but I'm also going to give you free reign within these guardrails, right? So you're going to say, hey, what are the inputs that you want to do? Your minimum viable data, right? If somebody comes to me that he says, I have this great idea, Glenn, we should buy a submarine and put a big logo of Southwest Key on it. That's a great idea. The only thing is we're not in the submarine building business. Yeah, but we're going to do great marketing. Well, it's a submarine on the water. When are they going to see it, right? Mm-hmm. See, he might have all the great intentions. So you have to establish what your inputs are. And by the way, when you're an enterprise is not kumbaya, right? It has risks. It has challenges. And it has benefits. And sometimes you fail. And you know what? There's nothing wrong in failing as long as you learn from it. But that's what you have to establish ahead of time. It's like, hey, let's just take an example that's close to our home. Hey, you know what? We need to have cameras up there. I don't want to do an organization or a architectural design for it. Just go to Walmart, buy 20 of those cameras, plug them in, put the server down, and we'll deal with it later. That's a risk because now those cameras or whatever, did we think about if they're compliant or not, right?
But you know what? It was a great idea and it solved the problem in an emergency, right? So this is where you're now starting as an enterprise and as part, so a target operating model. The word target means this is my goal. I might have something that works for me now, but it's not going to work sustainably, right?
Right.
And it cannot be scaled.
Right.
That's the problem. So what you do here is that you establish this, right? And by the way, we talked about those KPIs at the top, right? So you have KPIs that are, so when we do the strategy, we want to have KPIs across 4, 5, or 10 years, right? But you also have immediate KPIs. Let's just take a very simple example. One of the key performance indicators that are really operational for us is like when kids get to turn 18 in our shelters, they can be picked up by immigration, and it could happen, right? So one of the key performance indicators for us is we need to make sure that those kids that are about to turn 18 are our first priority so that they're out of the shelter, so they're not at risk of being deported. So what does that mean? Well, I need to have an indicator that tells me this kid is a month away, this kid is a week away, this kid is a day away, right? That's an immediate key performance indicator that is 100% operational. How does that align to we want to get our kids out of the shelters faster? It has an alignment, but it's a thin line towards it. It relates to it, but you see what I mean with that?
Yeah.
So when you're doing your requirements in your target operating model, you have to be able to be at that 10,000 level and also at -50, right?
Mhm.
And you have to balance that out. As you are building your target operating model, it is something that you're going to present not only to your leadership, but also to the people at the ground. And they will take from it, what's in it for me in here, right? That's what you're doing with this. So now that you establish your requirements, you move to your prioritization, right? So, and by the way, that's easy, right? They will tell us from the top what to do. What if they don't? What are you going to do then? So remember, I talked about this at the bottom up and top down. So, hey, I know I need to get 50 kids out of this shelter, but these 2 kids are going to turn 18 in the next week, and they need all my attention. These other kids can actually wait. So my key performance indicator bottom up, and my priority should be going to those 2 kids because God forbid that those kids get deported, and I've gone through so much. That aligns to the vision, but does not align to the goals or the key performance indicators that were on the top. See what I mean? So, and that's what you do. You establish what the scope is, your initiative list. You evaluate that against your strategic objectives. So I have this strategic objective of expedite people. I need to get 50 people out of there. But my mission statement says we need to keep children happy and we need to get them out. So 50 versus 2. I'm going to go for these 2 because if these 2 get deported, I failed them. These 50, they might be okay being at our shelter for another week.
Right.
For 3 months
Or 3 months or whatever.
Mhm.
See what I mean? So that's how you prioritize. Yeah. So when you prioritize, right, your prioritization has a direct impact to your risks, to your benefits, to your costs, and to your strategy alignment. Because, well, you know what? 90% of our population of children are between the age of 16 and 18. Okay, how many are between the age of 17 and 18? Well, actually 75%. Now we have to change our total. So now we have to do a what if analysis. So what happens if I focus on the people that are going to turn 18 and I do that? That means that these people are going to stay longer in shelters. Is that acceptable as per my vision or my mission statement? You don't know. You will have to bottom up, prioritize that. They need to make a decision. You can have an opinion, right? And you can guide it. So once you've done that, right? Contrary to popular belief, everything you do in life costs money. Everything you do in life provides money. When people say, no, we have a grant and we have this, you cost money, everything you do. Don't forget it, right? So if I'm going to focus on those 2 kids and I'm going to put all my efforts in there, if we were to use financial terms, my total cost of ownership for getting those kids out is going to be through the roof. If I do 50 kids, it's going to cost me $1,000 to get them out of the shelters to their people. If I do these 2 people, right, that means that each kid costs me $25,000. right? So again, you need to establish that. So what happens then? Well, you've established what your priority is, what your design is. Now you're going to go into really build this out, right? So you're going to deliver, you're going to do. So that means you're going to do your portfolios because it's all by group. You group certain things, right? We have medical, we have operations, we have IT, we have legal. And so they all manage their own list. They all manage their own important KPIs, right? And you establish your pipeline. So as you do that, you are starting to build out your portfolios, right? And as you are starting to build your portfolios, as you're doing your portfolios, you are also then establishing your scoring and your records for it, right? And as you're starting to do that, and remember that target operating model is trying to establish how we are going to do those status reports. And by the way, everything takes time, everything takes money, but we need to visualize that. So therefore, it's where you do your timeline, right? So when you're doing your build, it takes X amount of time to do that. So last but not least, after all is said and done, what came out of it, right? If you're doing something because of the sake of doing it, that's what we call it. That's business, right? You have to be aware of what you're saying. And so as a result of that, you have to do a continuous analysis of your risk, profitability, and aligned to that top-down strategy, right? But last but not least, also, you have to be holding yourself accountable at that operational level from that project and program level, okay? So we are like 2 minutes from our 30-minute mark. So these are the two top layers that you can do. Now, when it comes to the level 3, which is truly about capabilities and whatnot, I'm going to fly through that real quickly. It basically gives you some capabilities like financials that we talked about, like resources, people, like how you do the estimation. And notice that these capabilities come to life and to fruition at different stages of that value chain, right? And so as you go through them, there's your status reporting and your schedule. There might be some changes that happen, right? Then there's your issue risk management. And then you basically have your continuous elements. Those capability layers can be different for every single one of you, that is creating these target operating models. And so last but not least, I have to say that you also have these additional broader, let's say, capabilities. We call them basically the supporting capabilities, right? Think of it this way. A caseworker requires technology of IT in order to put their digital documentation. Risk requires cameras, so they require infrastructure and whatnot. So it really means that you have to have your governance and quality. You have your executive dashboarding because whatever comes from the top, right, needs to be aligned to it. Whatever you do, even if you think it does not, you need to have it. We talked about the process. So we want to have a capability that allows you to capture and do all these processes and everything that goes with it. And then last but not least, really the ongoing, I need this, I need that, because we're a vibrant organization. Notice that I left the technology for last, and it's on the side of it. Technology is part of it all, but drives nothing. Technology supports everything, but does not dictate anything. With that, this is, in a nutshell, how you can do the enterprise part of EPMO and how you can create a target operating model. Even if you're not an EPMO, as long as you're an enterprise that has a mission and a statement, be it one person or multiple, that's what this is. Thank you all.